Alrighty, friends, we are back. It's your favorite podcast show of the week. This is Location Weekly. This is episode number 701. Yes, we've crossed that threshold. It's a new year. We're sorry we've been off for a couple weeks here. We didn't get to do our holiday prediction show that we normally do. Lots going on, injuries, flus, holidays, all kinds of things. But we're back and we're happy to be here. And how are you, Brianna?
I'm good. I'm like finally catching up after CES. It's been a whirlwind, lots of changes. I'll talk more about those in the weeks to come, I'm sure. But yeah, things have been good, like just wrapping up the holidays and my household starts like really full force over here between industry events and birthdays and Three Kings Day. We're just like nonstop. So I feel like I'm kind of taking a little bit of a breath this week. But yeah, it's like just a crazy time and cannot believe we are in 2025. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm okay. It's been hectic. It's moved houses over the holidays and had to do some renos and kind of hurt my back. And so that impacted a lot of things because normally I'm at CES and we had a small LBMA meetup there, which I wasn't able to go to. And then this week normally I'd be at NRF, but can't be at that. Carson's there representing us as well. So yeah, it's just kind of all of that. And yeah, it's a busy time of year. And as you said, birthdays as well. Your husband and I both have the same birthday coming up next week. So there's that on the 20th. And this Friday I'm having shoulder surgery. So I will be hopped up on narcotics for a while too. So we'll see. We're trying to get a couple podcasts knocked out this week. So so I can recover. But yeah, busy times.
Yes, the fun of getting old. And we obviously have four great stories this week. And speaking of old, I'm kicking it off this week with one of my old stomping grounds, Digital Envoy or Digital Element. I'll just jump right in if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you don't know Digital Envoy, you may know them under the name Digital Element, the really the pioneer of IP intelligence, and they have been around since like 1999. A long industry player, primarily selling into the advertising technology space. Um, and so they've announced a new product. I'm really excited for this one, and I ran into them at CS. It was so great to see some old friends and just really excited for what they're doing and keeping, it's great to like see old companies iterating and doing something new. And so they've introduced something called LocID. So this is a geospatial ID. We've been hearing a lot about ID-based kind of programs and identity graphs, but it's really overcoming the challenges that the volatility of IP addresses are presenting to the digital advertising space. So they're quoting that, in a typical month, you might see around 40% of IP addresses reallocated now. That has changed drastically since I was working there. I think it's changed just due to how things are being allocated, the amount of mobile IPs. And so a lot of advertisers are wasting some of their ad spend because it's not actually going to the place or to the intended audience. So this is all based on their proprietary data, that stat is. But now they're really focusing on more solving this challenge for the CTV space, for example, DSPs, publishers, anybody that's really in the digital ecosystem. And they've done this with a partnership with Hopper. So Hopper has some market intelligence and audience insights data. And now between the two of them, they're kind of addressing this volatility. So they're using first-party behavioral data from Hopper. And then LocID is creating a framework where this location-based audience insights are ensuring that the geolocation data is consistent and it's doing this in a privacy compliant way, which is, I think, really important. So I think this is really cool. I think some of the things that they've talked about, like the features of this are really like the geospatial stability, the ability that it's minimizing data leakage, which is really important to a lot of companies. Like, how do we ensure that bad actors are not using it throughout the bid stream? And fingerprinting, re-identifying users. They also are streamlining the campaign operations, so it kind of can plug and play into all the different phases of the campaign lifecycle. some enhanced analytics opportunities, and then improving just data partnerships. So reducing the errors between different partners, right? So one says it's coming from this location, another data partner says it's coming from a different location. That makes it really complicated to determine, did you make good on that campaign delivery and intended audience? So I like this. I think this has a good upside. And I think that they have so many clients that are already in the space that are going to kind of upgrade to this new offering. So I'm excited to follow this one.
Yeah, I like it as well. I think from a publisher perspective, it creates an interesting way for them to, sort of utilize or monetize their first party data, and this idea of sort of encrypting IP addresses, and sort of having a way in a privacy framework to manage the bid stream, process throughout that, I think is a good thing. And I also think that, they built this in a way that, meets with GDPR and IAB, regulatory frameworks. So, from that point of view, I think it's also good in the sense that, it's not just, a US thing. Like this is something that, can be used globally. And obviously Digital Envoy Element, is a global company and, does a lot of work in Europe. So, I think this is always something that's more of a challenge there than it is here in North America. So I like it from that perspective as well. It's interesting. Like I wasn't super familiar with Hopper, but I did spend some time digging into them, and I'm really impressed kind of with their audience insights and behavioral data that they have. Something that I definitely want to look into more in terms of what we're doing at ground level as well, because there could be some synergies there. So good story all around. So. Okay, let's move on. Two of the industry stalwarts here have teamed up in TomTom and ESRI have partnered on some location analytics. So ESRI is adding TomTom's maps and traffic data into its display, geocoding, routing, and spatial analysis products globally. And so this is, the idea of ESRI's customers benefiting from, the TomTom capabilities within their, ArcGIS platform. So, it's one of these things where when I see two big powerhouses in the industry, collaborate, it says to me, a couple of things. So first off, at CES last year, we had the, whole sort of open maps framework, announcement happen. And TomTom, and Esri and everybody were sort of, at those announcements and being part of that, in terms of what's happening. You've got players like Microsoft and Amazon and others all participating in this. And so what I think we're starting to see now is a bit of a shakeout where companies like TomTom are looking and saying, well, how do we start to make money if, the core of mapping data and POI data is free? And open source, where are these opportunities to leverage? And I think, partnering with an Esri and saying, hey, we're putting our mapping data into the ArcGIS system and making that available to all of Esri's customers, which is 650,000 companies use Esri products globally, including a lot of governmental organizations, utility companies, banks and so on. So it's used by, the biggest, organizations out there in the world. And so I think there's, a lot to be said about, this type of collaboration. And I think, we're going to see more of these types of partnerships. I know we didn't get, to do our kind of prediction show that we normally do. But for me, one of the things I was going to say is, I'm expecting sort of old school big companies like the Esris and TomToms of the world to be making announcements this year about consolidation in the market, acquisitions, kind of rolling some of these things together that have been sitting out there in the ecosystem, from a startup point of view into just solidifying their positions and their market share. So I think it's a good partnership, and we'll see where it goes. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I agree that it's a good partnership. Again, it's just reminding me that like companies that have been around for a long time can still pivot. They can still be iterative and figure out new ways or new applications. And I think that this partnership makes a lot of sense in terms of how you mentioned how many customers they have. And there's still value in that mapping data, and there's still value in what they can allow and kind of create their own ecosystem for companies to build off of. So I think that there's something there, something to watch.
There you go.
Another collaboration, well, two companies we talk about a lot on this podcast, and this is super interesting to me. But here has entered into a huge deal with AWS. Okay, so it's a 10-year, billion-dollar cloud infrastructure agreement that's happened with AWS, and they're going to be supporting their AI-powered live streaming map and location services. This is specifically for automotive, transportation, logistics, and mobility companies. And so what's interesting is that, here has been using AWS for its cloud infrastructure for a long time. And now they're kind of just like, I would say, springboarding off of this. And AWS has this everybody knows it's like high performance, cost-effective computing infrastructure. So many companies are using it. But now they are deploying their unified map architecture. Here is. And so that's going to leverage here's AI and ML models to automate, update, enhance some of that IoT sensor data. That's really important. So some of the applications here, it's going to advance software-defined vehicles or SDV deployment. It's also going to help accelerate development of advanced driver assistance systems and automated driving. So, and in addition to just like typical digital car experiences, so think of like how you interact with, what's happening inside of your car on the screen and the navigation based on like point in time, all of that contextually relevant data. So this is making it easier, more effective to test some of these new driving technologies. And it's going to enable developers to build some of these location-based services for automotive use cases. So I think this is a really big deal. I think this is great for you. And I think that it just opens up a lot of opportunities again for automotive companies to really say like,
Sorry.
he's dying over here. Somebody get him to a hospital while you're in a car.
In so many ways. Oh, wow.
So, yeah, he's falling apart, guys.
I
So
am.
I think that like this is a really good technology collaboration, and the fact that it's like kind of been in the works for a long time, in the aspect that here's already been, utilizing AWS functionality, and now it's just going to, I think, like level up everything that they're doing.
Yeah, not a lot to add to it, but I'll say this. I had a conversation just before the holidays with our old friend Hervé Utheza over at here. And we were just catching up and talking about kind of where the company is going relative to, the LBMA and how we could support. And it was really, interesting to hear that, no pun intended, that they've kind of shifted in a lot of ways out of the retail and kind of consumer facing space that they had significant operations in, and really doubled down on the automotive sector. And so to me, this is good evidence of that, in that this partnership is really focused on mapping technologies, creating platforms for development for automotive, platform development, the here HD Live Map, data product, making that available through the AWS platform. Here they've got their scene extract solution for manually searching and locating real world environments into simulation models. And the whole simulation piece in the automotive space, I think, is huge right now. Both, I think the idea of simulation, for me, is something that I'm excited about in terms of where we're going as an industry, because I see it not just in things like mapping, but even in synthetic population modeling and predictive, behavior, in terms of, looking at, potential of where people are going and what they're doing, around foot traffic analytics and everything else. So I think there's a lot here, in terms of what these guys together can do, and making it available through the AWS platform makes a lot of sense to me. So, all right. Last story. So we're coming here to Canada, where I am now. Best Buy Canada has made an announcement that they are opening their retail media network platform to third-party brands whose products and services they don't directly sell. So I think this is interesting because obviously we've talked a lot last year about retail media networks. We talked about how every, major retail brand was, either creating one, expanding one, having good success in general with them. But now we're hearing about a brand that's saying, we don't want to just, promote or, make offers or run ads for products that we sell, but we're opening this up to third party products that we don't sell. So they're partnering with an AI and ML based e-commerce technology company called Rokt, which is ROKT, to enable these non-endemic brands to advertise there. So um, it's interesting. So they've got initial partners through the Rock solution with brands such as SiriusXM, HelloFresh, which is a grocery delivery, or sorry, kind of one of these grocery, box platforms, like meals ready to be made that arrive in a box with all the ingredients up here in Canada, and then DoorDash. And so all of these brands are advertising now in Best Buy stores, and they're offering unique offers that drive loyalty and make the overall shopping experience more engaging, for these customers. So for me, what's interesting about this, I think, is that, you know, you have a captive audience, you have people in these stores, you have, a media network that can reach them. The question for me is, what does that mean when you're talking about brands that, I can't buy while I'm there, right? And does it mean that it's just another ad exposure? Like it's essentially, more traditional sort of out of home type of placement, where I'm just looking for impressions. And they say that, they interact with 3 billion customers, interact 3 billion times a year in store and online with Best Buy. So that's not an insignificant number by any means. So are we talking about impressions here? Or are we talking about, potentially, a way for them to not just have impressions and generate revenue from selling, ad space or media space in their networks, but potentially, branching into other markets where, some of these products, can be sold and they can take, percentage of revenue off of, a sale of a grocery box or a DoorDash, delivery down the road, or maybe DoorDash gets into a partnership with delivering electronics, and not just, food and other things. I don't know yet. I think it's interesting. I think it's one where I'm not convinced yet, and I want to see how it shakes out. But I like that they're trying and they're experimenting and kind of bringing third party products into their network. What do you think?
I'm thinking of the opportunity of the actual flip side or the adverse relationship here. So like taking the data from Best Buy and making it available via Rock to other digital activations. And I think that that's powerful because there's a limited ecosystem in terms of the digital real estate that Best Buy has, right? It is, although it's vast, and we've talked about that with those 3 billion customer interactions annually, there's still some limitations there. So I think being able to utilize that data outside of that ecosystem is really powerful. And from what I understand about this partnership, that's what Rocked is doing. So being able to say people who are in market, maybe for a washer and dryer, and being able to utilize that in other places, I think that Best Buy's realizing, and I think this is super smart of them, is that people may not always buy here, but we can still monetize the data and we can still serve an ad to them via, what we know about customers and maybe who's in the market for what. And I think Rocked is just kind of the amplifier of that data for them. So I think it might be the first of many of these types of relationships, but I think this is the way that it should be. I think Best Buy is just a little bit, one, I think that they're willing to take a little bit bigger of a risk because of their place in the market today, but I also think that they're making a smart choice. Many of the other retail media networks, I think, are so they're so black box with their data that I think it's actually going to inhibit their growth over the next few years. So this is what I want to pay attention to and just see how this actually like feeds their bottom line.
I think it's a good point, and I think the other thing that popped in my head while you were just saying that is is there potentially a way to look at a correlation between your media space that you're selling on these in-store networks and potentially ad space that you have in your mobile app platform as well, right? So, could you be running in selling, inventory across the two together, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So, yeah. All right. Well, that's our show for this week. We thank you for listening and for watching. You've been absorbing episode number 701 of Location Weekly. We thank you as always for your time. If you have story ideas, reach out to us. If we've talked about your company today and you'd like to share more with us, reach out to us about that. And if you're a consumer, just give us some likes, some love on whatever podcast platform you're consuming this on. And we will see you next week with another show. Thanks, everybody. Have a great one. Take care.
All right.